This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Ghana's President Nana Akufo-Addo holds final rally ahead of Monday's presidential election. Egypt's President El-Sisi visits France for talks on regional issues. And another coronavirus record in the United States as parts of California order people to stay home. Welcome to Africa Live on CGTN with me, Beatrice Marshall, in Nairobi. Also coming up on the program, the African Union is upbeat ahead of the commencement of trade under the African Continental Free Trade Area. And in sports, Senegal eulogizes fallen 2002 World Cup hero Papa Bouba Diop as he is finally laid to rest. Let's begin the hour in Ghana, where in a matter of hours, voters will be heading to the polls. President Nana Akufo-Addo wrapped up his campaigns on Saturday by holding a major rally in the capital, Accra. This was a culmination of a tour of the city. Akufo-Addo is facing a stiff challenge from former President John Mahama Dramani. Critics have accused him of failing to revive the Ghanaian economy. However, he has also won praise for his handling of the coronavirus pandemic. In the meantime, political parties and presidential candidates have signed an agreement to uphold peace ahead of the election. As CGTN's Daniel Arap Moy reports, it is yet another chance for the country to witness a duel between two main rivals, President Nana Akufo-Addo and former President John Mahama.
Amid the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, campaigns in Ghana have been muted and laid back. However, political temperatures have been rising as the West African nation once again prepares for yet another political contest between President Nana Akufo-Addo and the man he replaced, John Dramani Mahama. Ghana is one of the few nations in the region and the continent that has earned respect and honor for managing post-election conflicts. However, this does not mean that clashes have not been reported before. It's based on this that leading candidates have committed to resolve any differences in the aftermath of the polls.
We in the NPP want a credible election conducted in a peaceful and tranquil atmosphere. We're certain we have a track record that will make Ghanaians vote to renew our mandate, just as it was in 2016. We want this victory to be sweet and incontestable.
Apart from Akufo-Addo and Mahama, 10 other candidates are contesting for the top seat. They include 3 women. Opinion polls have put incumbent Akufo-Addo ahead of his rival by a narrow margin. And this has set the stage for what could be another contested election, hence the need for the two main rivals to commit to peace.
As we end our campaign tomorrow and prepare to vote on Monday, I pledge to ensure peace and preserve the stability of our dear nation, Ghana. Elections are about counting heads and not cutting heads. And so we'll work together towards peaceful elections. I urge the security agencies, voters, and all stakeholders to ensure law and order. We expect to see all security personnel behave professionally.
In the 2012 election, Mahama narrowly defeated Akufo-Addo with 50.7% of the vote cast. However, in 2016, Akufo-Addo returned the favor by beating the then incumbent Mahama by 53.8%. Over 60,000 security personnel have been deployed to manage any pre- or post-election clashes. As local voters wait to cast their ballots, the hour ticks towards the D-Day. Daniel Arap Moy, CGTN.
Let's shift our focus to Egypt, where President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi is heading to France for a 3-day state visit. The two nations are long-time allies. France has described Egypt as a strategic partner for stability in the Middle East. President Sisi will meet his host, President Emmanuel Macron, on Monday. The Libyan peace process is expected to feature in the talks. Let's give you a broader look at the visit by the Egyptian president and what it means for the Middle Eastern region. I'm now joined from Cairo by CGTN's Adel Mahroui. Adel, can you tell us a bit more about the issues that are expected to be on the table during that visit?
This visit is basically going to concentrate on several files, primarily the bilateral relations between Egypt and France. As you've said, Egypt and France are very close allies. We've seen immense cooperation in the military field. We've seen Egyptian purchases worth billions of US dollars in recent years. There has been also massive cooperation in regional issues and boosting investment between the two nations. But one of the files that has been seeing pressure in recent days since the announcement has been announced, especially from the French side, is the human rights file. About 17 organizations have written a joint statement asking President Emmanuel Macron to press Egypt on the human rights file and recent arrests that happened for independent NGOs and independent personal rights organizations. That's the latest happened about 3 weeks ago, and just a few days ago the Egyptian authorities have released some of those arrested, and President Sisi goes there with this sort of movement being amassed in Paris. There are expected to be massive rallies to support Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi in Paris, as well as protesting rallies from rights organizations there. So it's a heated visit, and there are a lot of issues that will be discussed, and mainly that will also ignite a popular interest as the human rights file.
Adel, the Libyan crisis still remains very much an issue for the Middle East as well as the African continent. And the two leaders have previously agreed to work together to reach a settlement for the Libyan crisis. What should we expect from this meeting?
Definitely, Beatrice. Both Macron and el-Sisi have been quite clear when it comes to the Libyan file. They've been working together very closely, sharing intelligence, sharing information, and coordinating even international efforts. They both support the eastern side and General Khalifa Haftar, the head of the Libyan National Army. They have been taking similar sides and pushing together the Turkish influence from Libya. They have been sort of more or less aligned in all sorts of the aspects of the Libyan crisis. There is expected to see more coordination. This is the prime regional issues that concern the two states together. So this will be the main focus when it comes to discussing regional issues. And with the momentum of the peace process and the talks and the progress that has been seen on all political, military and economic levels in Libya, it is seeing that with this momentum fading away a bit in recent weeks, that both countries will be pushing forward to make sure that peace is reached quickly, to maintain that the influence of extremist groups fades away, and try to empower Libya somehow to fight terrorist groups and extremist groups as well. So this is the main concern for both countries when it comes to Libya, Beatrice.
Adel Mahroui joining us there from Cairo. Thank you. Let's now turn to Somalia. Concerns remain high in the country as the United States plans to withdraw all its military personnel. CGTN's Abdulaziz Bilo has the details.
In September, a U.S. service member was injured in a deadly Al-Shabaab attack in the Jubaland region. The U.S. Africa Command, one of several unified combatant commands of the Department of Defense, said the officer was injured while on an advise and assist mission alongside Somali elite troops before the insurgent group detonated a car bomb and mortar fire in Janai Abdallah, near the port city of Kismayo. Last month, a CIA operative was also killed while on a capture mission. The target was a top Al-Shabaab operative thought to be responsible for an attack that killed a U.S. soldier last year in neighboring Kenya. For years, the U.S. remains Somalia's biggest security partner and has been assisting the country's army to degrade the Al-Qaeda-affiliated group that has killed thousands of civilians and armed personnel while seeking to topple the internationally backed federal government based in Mogadishu. Washington now says that it plans to withdraw more than 700 American troops based in Somalia by mid-2021. The U.S. Department of Defense says it will continue conducting counter-terrorism operations and targeted intelligence from neighboring countries.
Great progress has been made in reviving the National Army. The U.S. administration is of the view that Somali forces can go in alone against Al-Shabaab without international support. We welcome any kind of assistance and military cooperation, and we as government will continue the fight against Al-Shabaab.
In October, Somalia's President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo warned against a hasty pullout of U.S. forces while calling for continuous security partnership.
The support of international partners in building effective, capable and responsible security forces for Somalia has been instrumental in fighting against Al-Shabaab. We have strategic security arrangements in place that will continue to guide the federal government of Somalia. We expect and foresee that Somalia's future in the transition period will not be standing alone.
Since taking office in 2016, U.S. President Donald Trump expanded the drone program in Somalia, with hundreds of strikes targeting key militant commanders and thwarting attacks on army bases. Civilians too have fallen victims to aerial strikes, with rights groups calling for full-scale investigations. For now, these US-mentored troops continue to make inroads into key militant strongholds. It's not clear whether the pullout will directly impact future operations, with leaders hailing security advances made by these elite troops in the lower Shabelle region, the epicenter of the conflict in Somalia. Abdulaziz Bilon, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
You're watching Africa Live. Still ahead on the program. Concerns over coronavirus spread at a Sudan camp for refugees. And Britain and the European Union resume talks in a final push for a Brexit trade deal.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
I've been Shiwishi, Tunis, Cairo, Juba, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
I try to not let it affect me, but there are days when it does. I'm a human being, and to see patients in a hospital bed and their family members are not there, there's no one there to hold their hand, that human touch, you know?
I just hope everyone can remember that the situation is not permanent and that everything will get better eventually.
There are concerns over the risk of a COVID-19 outbreak amongst Ethiopian refugees currently sheltering in Sudan. According to an official from medical aid agency Doctors Without Borders, most of the refugees arriving in the Rakuba refugee camp have no form of protection, including masks. Dr. Ali Mohammed, who runs a clinic near the camp, also says some of the refugees seeking medical assistance have been showing signs of the disease, but there are no means, no capacity to carry out mass COVID-19 tests. Rakuba refugee camp has more than 44,000 Ethiopian refugees who are fleeing fighting in the Tigray region. Dr. Mohammed is calling for more efforts to create health protocols, even as the United Nations and other aid agencies set up amenities for the refugees.
The problem becomes bigger because the person that comes here will go back to their camp where they live surrounded by people, so they could spread it very easily. There are also people going through difficult times. There are young people, older people, and also people who have chronic illnesses are there. And the people who have immune-compromising diseases exist. This is all a risk that COVID could spread more easily if it is found.
The matter is scary. When people are crowded together, they may be infected with coronavirus. People sit together and do not wear masks. Of course, it's scary.
If God wants that, then it will happen. We were in Ethiopia and a number of people died. We were afraid. If God wanted that, then it will happen. We're no longer concerned with that under our current circumstances, especially with shared housing. Even if you tried hard to protect yourself, you cannot achieve it.
The South African Health Ministry says the first batch of COVID-19 vaccines from the Global Vaccine Distribution Scheme COVAX could be available in the second quarter of next year. Angelo Coppola has more on this story.
In a statement released on Friday evening, the ministry says it will be signing an agreement with the WHO-led COVAX program by December the 15th. The plan is to purchase enough vaccine to cover 10% of the country's population, so around 5 million people will get the vaccine. Part of the signing of the deal involves a down payment of around $21 million. The ministry does estimate that the doses will eventually cost the country around $140 million. At the moment, it's unclear whether the entire batch of doses to cover those 5 million people will arrive at the same time or not, but it's most likely to be spread out over a period. The authorities here aren't putting all their eggs in one basket, though. There are currently 4 candidate vaccines being studied in South Africa, with other manufacturers looking to conduct trials here too. Zure Nkize, the health minister, says that while they favour the COVAX facility, they will keep their options open, one of which is the Johnson & Johnson trial taking place in the country at the moment. And that's because South African pharma company Aspen has been commissioned to produce 300 million doses of that candidate vaccine if it passes muster and gets approval. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
In the United States, the first shipments of a COVID-19 vaccine are expected to move out this month. But health officials say the batches won't be as big as many had hoped for. The news comes as the United States has recorded more than 200,000 new infections for a third straight day. Toby Muse reports.
The grim numbers just don't stop. On Friday, the US recorded 227,000 new infections of the coronavirus, a one-day record, beating the previous record which had occurred just one day earlier by 10,000 cases. States are struggling to contain the spread of the virus as they fear hospitals and health services could soon be overrun. California is mulling some of the strictest measures since the spring. Here's what the mayor of San Francisco had to say.
Starting Sunday, December 6th at 10 p.m., the following services will be required to suspend operations until further notice. Personal services, including hair and nail salons, outdoor museums, aquariums and zoos, indoor gyms, outdoor playgrounds, skate parks, roller and ice skating rinks.
And that's the economic cost of this pandemic, a long list of businesses forced to suspend operations. That's why there's a consensus that a new stimulus package is urgently needed. After months of negotiating between Republicans and Democrats, there's been recent hope that a new deal could be reached. There are reports that it could be around $900 billion. Now, that's more than the Republicans had wanted to spend, which was around $500 billion, but much more than the original stimulus package earlier this year that is credited with saving the American economy as it was in freefall. Vaccines are expected to be approved sometime later this month. States are being told by the government how many vaccines they're going to receive, and it's likely not to be enough. The Centers for Disease Control has said it wants to see the first groups to be vaccinated frontline healthcare professionals and residents of long-term care facilities like nursing homes. Now, that population is around 24 million people. The White House has said it wants to see 20 million people inoculated before the end of the year. It's not clear if that's going to be possible, given there has been some hiccups in the productions of the vaccine. The overall goal remains the same, of almost everyone in this country being vaccinated by sometime in the summer of 2021. Toby Muse reporting for CGTN in Arlington, Virginia.
Russia has just begun its mass inoculation campaign with its Sputnik coronavirus vaccine. Julia Chapman has more.
Russian officials are hailing this as the beginning of the mass vaccination program here in Russia, but there are still some serious caveats that apply, because so far the only people who can sign up to receive Sputnik V, the Russian vaccine here in Moscow, are those working in the education, healthcare or government sector if they have public-facing jobs. They also have to be under the age of 60 and have no underlying health conditions. So this isn't yet being rolled out, distributed to the wider public in Russia, but it certainly is the beginning of that program, and it comes after Russian President Vladimir Putin last week called on Russian officials to get underway with the mass vaccination in the country, of course following the UK regulators' approval of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine and the announcement that mass vaccination was going to get underway next week in the United Kingdom. There certainly have been criticisms that the process here in Russia is being rushed, and of course Sputnik V is still in phase 3 of clinical trials. Those haven't yet come to an end. We have received some preliminary data, and the developers say that they are convinced that it is both safe and over 95% effective against infection of COVID-19. Nevertheless, those trials haven't yet been finished. And of course, the Russian regulator approved Sputnik V even before the trials began back in August, before phase 3 got underway. So there are certainly some criticisms of the Russian rollout, but nevertheless, Russian officials maintain that they are ready and that this will get underway as soon as it is possible to get the entire population inoculated against COVID-19. Of course, the program is voluntary and it will be free for all Russian citizens. Julia Chapman, CGTN, Moscow.
Earlier, we spoke with Hilary Brick, a health reporter for the news website Insider, about whether someone who's been vaccinated can still transmit the virus.
Unfortunately, from the trials that have already been done in tens of thousands of people around the world of these mRNA shots, we don't actually know the answer to that question yet, but it's going to be really important to find out in the coming months, because that'll have huge implications for whether or not your shot only protects you, or whether you're contributing to that herd immunity by not passing it along to other people. But we just don't know yet. The mRNA vaccines are interesting because it's a newer technology and they've actually never been approved for use before, so it's completely new. But what we are seeing, both the Pfizer and the Moderna shots are mRNA vaccines, which is why they were able to be developed faster than others like the AstraZeneca or Johnson & Johnson. And it looks so far from the data that we have from these companies that these shots are extremely effective at preventing symptomatic infections. Obviously, we need to learn more, but so far they look very good.
Britain and the European Union are resuming Brexit trade talks today. It's a last-ditch attempt to bridge significant differences ahead of a year-end deadline. European leaders say key differences remain on 3 critical issues: a level playing field, governance and fisheries. But progress has been made in other areas. The deal covers almost $1 trillion worth of trade a year. And as negotiators try to break the stalemate, the United Kingdom is preparing for bottlenecks at the ports. Crews are building massive parking lots to handle an overflow of trucks that will now face customs checks for the first time in decades. Richard Bestick reports from Kent, near the country's busiest port.
They're working round the clock here, paving the so-called Garden of England to put up a parking lot, tearing out topsoil for tarmac in a race against the clock.
Britain will become what they call a third country, so we will need customs checks at the ports, which currently aren't in place. So there will need to be facilities for lorry drivers to be able to complete relevant customs checks.
These lorry parks constructed under emergency government powers, leaving the neighbouring village of Merson with little say in Britain's new borders with Europe. It is perhaps an irony that most of the people around here voted for Brexit, perhaps not realising it would mean a massive lorry park on their doorstep. Villagers stoic in the face of Brexit reality.
I don't think anyone who voted for Brexit actually knew the details of what they were voting for. And even with a month to go, we still don't know what use the customs site is going to be put to.
A medieval church now appears out of place. Across the county, they'll be holding sites for up to 7,000 trucks, according to the government's own worst-case scenario. Across the country, many more. Required whether or not a new trade deal is agreed, as drivers cope with reams of red tape in a post-Brexit world. An army of 50,000 customs officials being hired and trained. According to the British Ports Association, government should have been quicker off the mark.
The design of this process has been one-sided, to say the least. Effectively, what you would normally expect is some kind of outcome to be set in stone. The fact that we still haven't got a deal is quite amazing when you consider how long we've had to talk about this.
Dover is one of Britain's busiest ports, handling 10,000 trucks a day. This image of free trade in motion about to change radically. Richard Bestick, CGTN, Dover, England.
You're watching Africa Live. Is still ahead on the program. The African Union is upbeat ahead of the commencement of trade under the African Continental Free Trade Area.
It's just taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
The African Union has been holding a special summit to discuss one of the continent's biggest trade milestones. The 13th Special Summit of the Assembly on the African Continental Free Trade Area is being chaired by President Cyril Ramaphosa, who said the agreement signaled a new era of progress. Trading under the Africa's Free Trade Area is set to start on January the 1st, 2021. The treaty looks to create an integrated African market. So far, over 30 countries have ratified the deal. South African President Ramaphosa addressed the summit in his capacity as the African Union chairperson.
The commencement of trading under the AfCFTA on the 1st of January 2021 is one of the most significant milestones in the continental integration project. Our treaty will boost intra-African trade. It will promote industrialization and competitiveness and contribute to job creation, and it will unleash regional value chains that will facilitate Africa's meaningful integration into the global economy.
Residents in South Africa's coastal city Durban are still reeling after an explosion rocked the engine oil refinery early on Friday. Firefighters managed to extinguish the blaze in just a few hours, but questions are being asked by residents in the area around safety of the refinery. CGTN's Julie Shire reports.
Marybank residents in South Africa were shaken by a massive explosion at the engine oil refinery.
Debbie Green lives opposite the site where the blast happened.
We heard like a bang. Actually thought it was like a bomb right outside my door, but I was standing by my gate. It was crazy because our windows were rattling. Children were screaming, everybody was screaming. It was like just so dramatic and so nerve-wracking. We didn't know what was happening until like we came out, because this bang just actually hit us like back into our houses. And we came out, we saw now it was engine burning.
Firefighters brought the blaze under control quickly, but Green says residents are concerned for their safety.
Obviously, we don't feel safe. I mean, it's not the first time this is happening, not the second time this is happening. We don't feel safe, but where to go? You know what, I've been living here, I've been brought up here for over 40 years. We're not all like blessed and rich, like where we can just go and move out of the area and buy houses and things.
No major fuel supply disruptions are expected, but 7 workers who were on site were treated by emergency personnel.
Patients weren't injured from the actual blast itself, but rather had respiratory complications as a result of smoke inhalation, and they were treated by the paramedics at the scene and transported to hospital. They were all in a stable condition.
Engen is one of South Africa's biggest petroleum producers. The company has declined to comment on the cause of the blast, but a full investigation is being conducted. Julie Shara, CGTN, Marybank.
A Tunisian startup is aiming to increase financial inclusion in the North African state through its mobile and web application that allows users to create free bank accounts remotely. Formed in January 2018, the fintech startup that is known as Kaun is building a pipeline for financial inclusion. CGTN's Adnan Chauchi reports.
Floussi, in the local Tunisian dialect, or My Money, is a Tunisian financial super application which was recently launched by a local startup. The mobile app that is set to start a real mobile payment ecosystem in the North African country offers many services, including sending money instantly through any mobile phone. The startup co-founder Anis Kallel says that slightly over a third of Tunisians have bank accounts. This means there is a large population that is unbanked, despite 70% of the population owning a smartphone.
With Floussi, we tried to solve the basic issues around barriers to entry to the traditional financial and government services. That becomes more prevalent with the number of unbanked people. So we tried to look for an easier way for people to access bank accounts for free, as a gateway to let them know that cash is actually inconvenient.
The United States-trained IT engineer bemoans the bureaucracy involved in signing administrative and legal documents for opening accounts that have held back majority of Tunisians from inclusion in the financial system.
The idea was to build products around it for more value added, so that you don't have to go to municipalities to notarize documents as much. You can sign different contracts without the need to go anywhere from the comfort of your smartphone.
Nebraz Jmal and his partner have relied on the legal framework for electronic signatures that was approved by the state since the year 2000 to offer a new e-signature service. Nebraz and Anis spent more than 2 years to get the central bank's approval to operate in the country.
The main challenge we faced is the fact that the regulation is really hard to decipher on one end, and also is not really designed for a world where smartphones exist and where people are connected. So going around and having an interpretation of the current regulation in the country, and working with the central bank as well as a number of government ministries to be able to find a solution that wouldn't allow, that wouldn't need political muscle to just change the laws for us to function was a very hard challenge.
Floussi co-founders believe the financial app will improve the quality of services and offer new opportunities for millions of consumers in the North African state.
There's a number of advantages for using your smartphone as your main means for transactions. The first one of those is that it unlocks a universe that you haven't had access to before, when it comes to the set of services that you'd have access to, when it comes to the ease of use, as well as the how much you can trace your previous expenditure. It also allows you to, it gives you an added level of security actually compared to both cash and credit card payments.
Restructuring the financial sector is one of the main objectives of business operators in Tunisia. Businesses which have a physical or an online store can use the business portal that includes analytics and invoices. The app is a step forward in boosting mobile payment in the country. Anis and Nibras, the two entrepreneurs who are behind the success story of the app Flussi, are now planning to conquer the North African market and Sub-Saharan Africa, as well as the Middle East region, Europe and Latin America. Abdel Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
South Africa's wine industry will be looking to increase its market share in China after it imposed provisional new export tariffs on Australian wines. The move stems from anti-dumping concerns and will effectively see several duties imposed on Australian wines entering China. CGTN's Travers Andrews has more with his report.
With Australian wines now subject to provisional export tariffs in China, it's South African labels such as these which could be the biggest winners. They could end up on the shelves of Chinese supermarkets and across e-commerce platforms, as the industry looks to grow beyond its 1% market share on the back of new tariff duties on Australian wines. The local industry has for many years looked to the Chinese market for much needed growth, and this development opens up new opportunities.
This is definitely a very big market for South African wine, and one that we intend to explore straight away. Our market manager in China, based in Shanghai, has already started discussions with various traditional Australian wine importers, as well as bigger groups of companies. And we really feel that this is a good opportunity for South African wine in the Chinese market.
It is the economies of scale that make the Chinese consumer wine market such an attractive drawcard for the industry, because growing beyond the current 1% market share could lead to greater sustainability for the sector. Traditional markets have been far from explosive, but China is shaping up to be one of the most important markets for South African wines, especially red wine cultivars.
So in China, that population is becoming more sophisticated with wine. So there is an opportunity there to sell, or actually even for them to experience better quality South African wines. And also for me, long term, I see that there is a big potential, not only for red wine, you know, China is a mainly red wine market, but also white wine.
The South African wine industry presence in China has been growing, and so have Chinese investments in local wineries, much of which is situated in the Western Cape. Here in the Franschhoek wine-growing region, some of the most established farms already have their premium brands on sale in the Chinese market. Many, though, have for years looked to upscale their volumes to the east. The industry, though, believes while the tariff issue does open up some new opportunities, a long-term approach to the Chinese market is what is needed.
In terms of our relationship with Chinese wine importers, I think the most important thing to focus on for any South African wine exporter is that of building relationships. It has long been known that relationships are key when it comes to your exporters, and to ensure that they understand our country, our quality, where we stand, and having really open lines of communication throughout the period is most important. Those relationship building exercises are what's going to see us through in the longer term.
And as perennial winners of international wine competitions, many stakeholders believe the quality is there to back up the relationship, which could look set to grow even further in the near future. Travers Andrews, CGTN, Cape Town.
And to stay with us here on the program, we still have more news for you. Coming up, here's what's ahead. Meet a group of social workers in Uganda who are transforming young lives in a Kampala slum.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Tanzania, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
You're watching breaking news on CGTN.
Welcome to the world today on CGTN.
Well, let's now take you to Uganda, where a group of social workers, locally known as street uncles, are transforming the lives of young people living in slums. They are former addicts who are now inspiring young people to live a life free of drugs. CGTN's Hilary Ayesiga reports.
A former street child born in Kisenyi, one of the poorest communities in Uganda's capital, Kampala. Marco Wori is using his life experience to help the young people here give up on drug addiction.
Drugs is not the solution, but the solution is we are the one carrying the solution. These children have no problem, the youth have no problem, but they are left out.
Most of these young people sniff a cocktail of harmful drugs such as heroin, aviation fuel, and marijuana. The street uncles have now teamed up to help them get off the street and live a responsible life.
I started art and craft. So I use the art, performing arts and visual arts to implement like programs to change, attitude change among vulnerable youth, children and all the people. That's why I see wherever I say that people are working.
Government figures show that about 20 children become homeless every day. But through this social interaction with the street uncles, many of them have been reunited with their families. The street uncles say they've reunited over 100 children with their parents. These former street children say they are grateful to have a new life.
He found me like a destitute, without any place of abode and nothing to eat. He taught me how to do art and craft.
He found me when I was still young on the street. It's now coming to 10 years. He helped me start a small business.
According to figures from Uganda Harm Reduction Network, a local non-government organization, close to 1 million people in Uganda use illicit drugs. Street uncles believe their approach is part of a bigger solution to reduce drug abuse in the country. Hilary Ayesiga, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
And we now head to Egypt, where the film industry players attended the 42nd edition of the Cairo Film Festival. The event, that will take place over a 9-day period, will be screening about 80 films from 40 countries. Here's CGTN's Wanja Mungai.
It's all glam and glitz in Cairo at the launch event of the 42nd Cairo International Film Festival. Egyptian celebrities, filmmakers and fashionistas graced the event, with high hopes of a successful 2020 edition despite the pandemic.
Today is the launch of the Cairo Film Festival. I think this is an important point, especially given that all festivals across the world have stopped. Very few have been completed. We are all happy with this large event.
The festival kicks off on the 19th of November through to the 28th. During the 10 days, about 80 films from 40 countries will be screened. And despite the coronavirus scare, thespians are braving the situation.
Of course, like you can see here, it's almost similar back to normal. So here's me hoping that everyone is negative and all good. But you know, cinema needs to be seen in theaters. It needs to be seen on the big screen. It can't be seen on a small 13-inch laptop.
In Africa, Egypt comes in second after South Africa to have the most cases of COVID-19. The Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reports above 117,000 infections so far. But even with the glaring statistics, film lovers and makers are optimistic.
From what I see, people are distributing masks and sanitizers, but of course there is a personal responsibility for everyone. This is what matters.
In the meantime, most are eager to take part in the most prestigious event on the Egyptian calendar. Wanjamungai, CGTN.
And your sports news coming up next. Here's what's ahead. Senegal eulogizes fallen 2002 World Cup hero Papa Bouba Diop as he is finally laid to rest.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Kung Fu or wushu is gaining popularity among young Tanzanians. Saidi Mfaume is one of several Kung Fu instructors in the country who are keen on seeing the Chinese martial art form grow. CGTN's Isaac Lucando has more.
Saidi Mfaume is training Tanzania's next generation of Kung Fu masters. Known as Master Mfaume to his students, he began learning Kung Fu 16 years ago. Being kicked out of his relative's home for his love of the sport only intensified his zeal.
I was steadfast. I didn't know why, because at the time, Kung Fu was largely unknown in the country and the Wushu Association did not exist. It was simply a hobby, but a sense of heroism drove me to want to be a hero, in that I could live any kind of life anywhere.
With a black belt and a diploma in Kung Fu, Mfaume is now a planning officer in the Tanzania Wushu Association. He says the Chinese embassy in the country is helping them grow the sport.
Through aid from the Chinese government, we get training. They believe that we will develop this art form. There are those that drop out along the way, and there are those of us who keep at it. Recently, we have acquired a teacher who has volunteered to prepare a team for the Olympics.
In the last decade, more than 15 Kung Fu clubs have sprung up in Dar es Salaam, attracting young people, mostly males, to the sport and Chinese culture.
After appearing as special exhibition events at both the 2008 Beijing Olympic Games and the 2014 Nanjing Youth Olympic Games, Wushu, widely known as Chinese Kung Fu, will make its debut as an official sport at the 2022 Dhaka Youth Olympic Games. The Tanzania Wushu Association hopes that the continued growth of the sport will give the country a chance at being represented in the game.
To help spread the sport, Mfaume formed the Shaolin Temple Club in 2010, which has now spread over 6 regions in the country. Hamad Rashid, one of Mfaume's over 300 students, says the sport has a lot to offer.
I would watch movies with actors from China, the likes of Jackie Chan and Jet Li, and I thought, why don't I learn this sport? Because the motto of the sport is health, defense, and entertainment. I love being healthy, being able to defend myself, and of course, entertainment.
Mfaume says he sees opportunities for his students in tournaments and even movies. To attract more people to join his club, he has decided to waive the training fees for those without the financial means. He believes exposing young people to the sport will make the country and its young people better. Isaac Lukando, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
Senegal has been eulogizing one of its most prominent modern-day football stars who passed on early this week. Papa Bouba Diop, a hero and top scorer for the country at the 2002 World Cup, has been awarded the country's highest honor by President Macky Sall before he was laid to rest in Dakar. CGTN's Mohamed Abubakar reports.
Thousands of Senegalese gathered at the Blaise Diagne International Airport of Dakar to receive the body of former Senegalese player Papa Bouba Diop. Family and supporters all paid homage to the man who scored Senegal's first World Cup goal at the 2002 FIFA World Cup.
A model of a son, valiant and worthy of a lion, he was also a model citizen in the image of an ambassador committed to duty alongside all the lions of the 2002 generation. Since the announcement of his death, the whole country and the sporting world as a whole has been in shock.
We are torn between sadness and gratitude. Yes, sadness, because it was a shock when we received the news of the lion's death. A real sadness that we shared with all the Senegalese people and all sportsmen and women. We have a feeling of gratitude towards a lion who gave everything to the nation.
President Macky Sall, who was there to preside over the homage ceremony, announced that the museum in construction at the Stadium of Senegal for the 2026 Youth Olympic Games will be named after Diop to honor his contribution to the country.
Since the announcement of Papa Bouba's demise, the whole Senegalese nation has been surprised, bruised and shocked. And to honor your memory, I have decided to raise you to the dignity of Grand Officer in the National Order of the Lion, and also to offer your name to the Football Museum that will be erected very soon.
Senegal Football Federation President Augustin Senghor, who submitted his candidacy for the CAF presidential elections in March, also paid his tributes.
The feeling I have right now is a feeling of sadness, because when you lose someone of that dimension, you can only be sad. But after the ceremony, I felt a little comforted because Senegal as a whole paid a tribute to Papa Bouba Diop here in Dakar as soon as his remains arrived.
Diop was buried on Saturday at his hometown in Rufisque, just outside Dakar city. Mohamed Abubakar, CGTN.